Everyone at the reception thought I'd caved. When my brand new sister-in-law snatched the microphone in front of 200 guests and declared the Buckhead house was hers, paid in full, and my name would never make it onto the deed, the whole ballroom held its breath. Every eye swiveled to me, waiting for tears, for screaming, for the humiliated bride to break and run. My husband stared at his plate and mumbled that she was right. My mother-in-law preened and called me a lucky nobody who should be grateful for a roof over my head. I just smiled, lifted my champagne flute, and thanked her. No yelling, no fighting, not a single crack in my composure. They all went home that night convinced they'd won. Convinced the quiet girl from Ohio knew her place and would stay in it. They had no clue what was coming. By the next morning, when they showed up at the building with their keys, ready to march in and inspect their property, they didn't find me behind the door. They found a stranger in silk pajamas, staring back at them like they were the trespassers, and asking what business they had in her house. By noon, the entire Hayes family understood exactly what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. This is how I took back everything they tried to take from me. Chapter 1. The reception. The hum of the wedding reception still hung thick in the grand ballroom of the Midtown Atlanta Hotel. The MC had just rapped his toast to the newlyweds, and guests were lifting their champagne flutes when a woman in a custom silk gown stepped forward and plucked the microphone from its stand with a sharp, manicured hand. Victoria Hayes, Ethan's older sister. She wore a smile that never reached her eyes, scanning the room until her gaze locked on me. Claire, her brand new sister-in-law. The wedding dress I'd saved 3 years to afford suddenly felt heavy, scratchy against my skin. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice carrying crisp and clear across the ballroom. "For those who don't know me, I'm Victoria Hayes, Ethan's big sister." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Everyone in Atlanta's old business circles knew the Hayes name and their construction empire. "Today's a big day for my little brother," she went on, tilting her chin up in that familiar, haughty way. "And I wanted to give him and his new bride a very special wedding gift." She paused, letting the words hang. Then her eyes cut to me, sharp and triumphant. "That new house in Buckhead? The one they're supposed to move into tonight? I paid for it. All cash." The room erupted in quiet gasps. I felt every pair of eyes swivel to me, curious, pitying, openly amused. "So let's get one thing on the record right now," Victoria said, pointing a finger straight at me from across the head table. "Her name will never be on that deed. Not now. Not ever." Dead silence fell over the ballroom. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I turned to Ethan, my husband of 3 hours. He stared down at his plate, jaw tight. When he finally felt my gaze, he flinched, then leaned in so only I could hear. "She's right," he mumbled. "She paid for it. It's only fair." No apology, no defense, just a quiet plea for me to swallow it and behave. Beside him, Margaret Hayes, my new mother-in-law, sat up straight, preening like she'd just won a prize. "That's right," she called out, loud enough for the whole table and half the guests nearby to hear. "If it weren't for Victoria, you'd be stuck in some tiny apartment inside the perimeter. Girl, you should be grateful a nobody from Ohio gets to live in a house like that for free." The whispers swelled. "She didn't put in a dime. Total gold digger. Told you she was after their money." I took one slow, deep breath. I smoothed the lace on my dress. Then I stood, picked up my champagne flute, and walked over to where Victoria stood by the microphone. She looked down at me, smug, like she was waiting for me to cry, scream, or run out of the room. I held the glass up toward her, my hand steady. "Thank you, Victoria," I said, loud enough for everyone within 10 feet to hear. "That's incredibly generous of you. We're very lucky." I took a small sip of my own drink. Victoria stared at me, stunned. I could see it on her face. She'd had a whole speech ready, every barb and dig rehearsed. All of it died in her throat. I turned and walked back to my seat. I sat down, picked up my fork, and took a bite of salad. It tasted like nothing. Everyone thought I'd backed down, that I'd folded, accepted my place as the charity case daughter-in-law. Ethan sighed in relief beside me. Margaret nodded, satisfied. Victoria huffed and marched back to her seat, still thrown off balance. They thought the fight was over. They had no idea it was only just beginning. Chapter 2. The morning after the reception ended on a weird, tight-lipped note. The limo ride back to Buckhead was dead silent. Ethan tried to start talking twice, glanced at my blank profile, and thought better of it both times. I stared out the window at the streetlights whipping past. I replayed it all in my head. Victoria's sneer. Margaret's sniping. Ethan's quiet, she's right. The weight I'd carried for months, all the excuses I'd made for him. All the times I'd told myself he'd stand up for me one day, lifted right off my chest. No more lies. No more hoping. The truth was right there. Plain as day. When we pulled up to the house, Ethan finally spoke. Claire, come on. Don't be mad. I didn't look at him. Victoria's just blunt. She's got a big heart. Though, she did this for us. I said nothing. Think about it. House paid off. No mortgage? That's years of our lives we don't have to work for. He was talking faster now. Trying to convince me. Trying to convince himself. I finally turned and looked at him. Calm as anything. You done? He blinked. Yeah, I'm done. Okay. I opened the car door and stepped out. He scrambled after me, holding the train of my dress. The house was decked out in wedding decor, red ribbons. A congratulations banner on the mantel. Brand new furniture still with tags on some pieces. This used to be my dream. A home of our own. Now it just felt like someone else's property that I'd been allowed to visit. I kicked off my heels and stood barefoot on the cold hardwood floor. Go sleep in the guest room, I said. Ethan's face went red. What? Claire, it's our wedding night. I'm tired. I walked into the master bedroom, closed the door, and locked it behind me. I leaned back against the wood and listened to him bang on the door for 10 minutes. First pleading, then annoyed, then angry. Asterisk, quit being ridiculous. You're overreacting. Asterisk, eventually he went quiet. I heard his footsteps trudge down the hall. I slept like a rock that night. I woke up to my phone buzzing on the nightstand. Margaret. I hit decline. She called again. I declined again. A minute later, Ethan was pounding on the door. Claire, get up. My mom's blowing up my phone. I got up slow, washed my face, pulled on jeans and a sweater, and unlocked the door. He stood there with dark circles under his eyes. Furious. Why didn't you answer my mom's calls? Didn't feel like it. You're so childish. What did she want? I cut him off. He huffed. She wants us to go over to the house right now. We need to drop off the spare keys. Got it. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. He followed me, still ranting. Look, when we get over there, you need to be nice. Okay, let yesterday go. Family's family. We all just need to move on. I finished my water and set the glass in the sink. Let's go. Did you even hear me? I heard you. I slipped on my shoes and opened the front door. Bright sunlight flooded in. Beautiful day. Perfect for settling accounts. Ethan drove. Margaret talked his ear off on speakerphone the whole way. Hurry up. Your sister and I are already at the building. We need to walk through and make sure nothing's damaged. Can't trust outsiders with nice things. That word, asterisk outsiders asterisk, cut through the car clear as a bell. Ethan glanced at me. Awkward. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes like I hadn't heard a thing. We pulled up to the apartment building. Margaret and Victoria were waiting by the entrance. Victoria had on full designer makeup and a tailored blazer, chin tilted up like she owned the whole block. Margaret stood with her arms crossed, scowling like she was there to inspect a rental property. They spotted us and marched over. Victoria held her hand out to me. Palm up. Keys, she said. Chapter 3. It's my house now. She stood there with her hand out, like she was collecting tribute, not asking for keys to a house she thought was hers. Margaret stepped up right beside her, like a bodyguard. Come on. Quit dragging your feet, Margaret said. We need to do a walkthrough. Make sure you didn't break anything last night. Ethan looked at me. Helpless. Claire. Come on. Just give her the keys. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and checked the time. Then I smiled at him. No rush. No rush. Victoria squawked. This is my property. I can come and go whenever I want. Claire. Don't play games. I ignored her and looked straight at Ethan. You sure this is your sister's house? He blinked. Confused. Yeah. She paid cash for it. The deed's in her name, good. I cut him off. If you're so sure, let's go up. I turned and headed for the elevators. The three Hazes exchanged a look. Confused, but arrogant enough to follow. The elevator ride up to the 18th floor was dead silent. Victoria and Margaret stared daggers at me the whole time, like they could force a reaction out of me with their eyes alone. I just smiled. The elevator dinged. We stepped out into the hallway. I walked straight to the front door, the one with the little, just married sign still taped to it. Victoria shoved past me. Hard. Move. She jabbed the doorbell over and over. Nothing. Hello. She banged on the door. What's going on? Margaret huffed. Just use your key. Why are you messing around? Victoria smacked her forehead. Right? She gave me a smug little look and dug a shiny new keyring out of her purse. She'd had a copy made the day before. She'd bragged about it. She jammed the key into the lock and twisted. Nothing. She twisted again. Harder. The lock didn't budge. What the hell? Her face started to turn red. Why isn't it working? Did you grab the wrong key? Margaret leaned in, squinting. No, it's the right one. While they were both wrestling with the lock, the door clicked open from the inside. A woman in a silk pajama set stood in the doorway, dark hair loose over her shoulders, looking half asleep and very annoyed. She looked to be in her mid-30s, sharp and polished, like she owned the place. Because she did. Can I help you? She said, raising an eyebrow. It's 8 a.m. Who bangs on someone's door at 8 a.m.? Victoria froze. Margaret's mouth dropped open. Ethan just stared, stunned. I stood at the back of the group, a tiny smile tugging at my lips. The woman looked Victoria up and down, then glanced at the key in her hand. She put it together fast, and her expression turned colder. This is my home, she said. Who are you looking for? Your home. Victoria let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. She held up a folded-up deed in her other hand, waving it like a weapon. Look again. This is my house. The deed says Victoria Hayes. The woman flinched back a little at the yelling, then just looked at her like she felt bad for her. Ma'am, I think you're confused, she said, calm and even. I bought this place. Closed yesterday. Bought it? From who? Victoria sputtered. The woman thought for a second. Oh, right. The seller's name was Claire. Claire Bennett. Chapter 4. Claire's plan. The words hit the three Hazes like a bomb. Victoria went pale. She whirled around to stare at me, eyes wild. Claire, what is this? What did you do? Margaret pointed a finger at me, shaking. You little con artist. You did something. You forged something. Ethan just stood there, frozen, like his brain couldn't process what was happening. I stayed where I was, smiling, and said nothing. The woman in the doorway, Zara, glanced at Victoria's crumpled deed, then at me. She put it together. Oh, you must be the sister-in-law I heard about, she said. Dry. Heard about? Victoria shrieked. I am the owner. Who even are you? Zara crossed her arms. Zara Sterling. I'm a real estate investor. This unit was listed a month ago. I made an offer. We closed yesterday morning. I have a warranty deed with my name on it, recorded with Fulton County. She stepped aside and gestured to the coffee table inside, where a brand new red folder sat open. You're welcome to look. But I'd hurry. I have movers coming in an hour, and I don't have time for trespassers. Victoria stormed inside and grabbed the deed. Her hands shook as she flipped through it. No, this is fake, she screamed. Margaret stumbled in after her, took one look at the document, and almost fell over. Ethan finally found his voice. He turned to me, horrified. Claire, what did you do? I didn't answer him. I just watched the three of them fall apart. Zara leaned against the doorframe, watching them with amusement. Look, ladies, if you think your deed is real, go down to the county recorder's office and run a title search. But if you don't leave my property in the next 5 minutes, I'm calling the police. Trespassing is a misdemeanor in Georgia, and I don't mind pressing charges. She pulled her phone out of her pocket like she meant it. Victoria and Margaret panicked. They knew exactly what would happen if the cops showed up and Zara's paperwork checked out. Let's go. Mom, Ethan, let's go. Victoria grabbed Margaret's arm and practically dragged her toward the door. Margaret was too stunned to even yell at me on the way out. Ethan gave me one last look, angry, confused, scared. Then he turned and ran after them. The door clicked shut behind them. Zara turned to me, grinning. Claire Bennett. That was ice cold. I love it. I walked over to the coffee table and ran a finger over the edge of the new deed. Zara Sterling. It said, clear as day. Thanks for playing along. Zara. She clapped me on the shoulder. Are you kidding? Best real estate closing I've ever been part of. And I got a great property out of it. Win-win. She handed me a copy of the property listing agreement and the power of attorney file. My signature was at the bottom of every page, dated a month prior. Here's the thing no one in the Hayes family knew. Victoria had bought this place 6 months earlier, bragging to everyone that she was surprising her baby brother with a paid-off wedding home. She'd put the deed in her own name. Obviously. What she didn't know was that from the day Ethan proposed, I'd been doing my homework. I'd pulled property records, run background checks, mapped out every asset the Hayes family had on the books and off. I knew the Buckhead condo was Victoria's. All cash, no mortgage. And I had a plan. When Victoria had a sudden cash crunch last spring, Margaret had gotten sick. Hospital bills piled up. And one of their family projects had gone over budget. I'd offered to help. I'd told her I had a trust fund payout coming in, and I could lend her the full amount to cover the condo purchase. She jumped at it. I'd wired her the money. The memo line on the transfer didn't say loan. It said property acquisition funds. And when we'd met at the title company to finalize the paperwork for the purchase, I'd slid a whole stack of documents in front of her. She'd been in a hurry, stressed about her mom, eager to get the deed in her name. She'd signed every page without reading a single one. One of those pages was a declaration of beneficial ownership. It stated plainly that Victoria was only holding the property in name only, that I was the actual buyer, the one who'd put up 100% of the funds. Another page was a durable power of attorney for real estate matters. It gave me full, irrevocable authority to sell, lease, or otherwise dispose of the property whenever I wanted. She'd had no idea. I'd let her have her big wedding day moment. I'd let her humiliate me in front of all those people. I'd smiled and thanked her. Let her think she'd won. It was all just to keep her distracted, keep her from checking. And while they were all toasting and partying at the reception, my lawyer was finalizing the closing with Zara. Zara was my second cousin on my mom's side, a successful developer based out of Miami. I'd called her a month earlier, told her the whole plan, and asked if she wanted a Buckhead condo at market rate. She'd said yes before I finished explaining. By the time Victoria showed up with her family to collect keys, the sale was already on the books. I looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the Atlanta skyline. The sun was bright. The sky was clear. Now comes the fun part, I said. Quiet. Zara raised an eyebrow. Fun part. I picked up my phone and pulled up my lawyer's contact. I'm filing for divorce. And I'm going to get back everything they tried to take from me. And then some. I hit call. Hi, David. It's Claire Bennett. Yeah, where go? File the dissolution papers today. And send over the full asset package on Hayes Enterprises. I want them to feel exactly what it's like to lose everything they thought was theirs. Zara watched me, impressed. You've changed, Claire. I looked at my reflection in the window. I looked the same, but I felt lighter, sharper. Some things you just grow out of. I said, you know? She nodded. They're not gonna go easy. The Hayeses fight dirty. I smiled. Cold and sharp. Good. I'm counting on it. Chapter 5. Their first counterattack, the three Hayeses stumbled back into the family mansion in Sandy Springs like they'd been hit by a truck. "This can't be happening," Victoria kept saying, pacing the length of the marble foyer. She slammed her old deed down on the coffee table. "My name is on this. How can someone sell my house?" Margaret collapsed onto the couch, face tight with rage. "That girl. That little gold digger. She tricked us. She planned this whole thing." Ethan stood by the fireplace, pale and shaky. It was finally sinking in how badly he'd misjudged me. "Mom, sis, what do we do now?" he said. "Quiet." Victoria rounded on him. "What do we do? This is your wife. Did you know about any of this?" "No." He held his hands up. "I swear I didn't. If I'd known if you'd known." "What?" Margaret snapped. "You'd have stopped her? Please. You can't even stand up to her at dinner, much less stop something like this." She jabbed a finger at his chest. "You let her make a fool out of all of us. The Hayes name is a joke today." Ethan's face burned, but he didn't argue. He never did. Victoria kept pacing, muttering to herself, "No, we're not letting her get away with this. That house is mine. We're getting it back." Margaret sat up a little. "How?" "Call Mr. Hale," Victoria said. "Our family attorney. He handles all our real estate stuff. He'll fix this. He'll get the sale thrown out." Margaret's face lit up. Hale had been their lawyer for 20 years. He'd gotten them out of worse jams. "Right? Call him right now." Ethan nodded along, relieved. If Mr. Hale was on it, everything would be okay. It had to be. They called him, frantic, and drove straight to his office downtown. Arthur Hale was in his late 60s, silver-haired, calm as anything. He listened to Victoria's whole story, leaving out the part about the wedding day humiliation. Of course, and frowned. "So there's a new deed, in this woman's name. And she says she bought it from Claire Bennett." "Yes," Victoria said. "It's fraud. It has to be." Hale picked up his phone. "Let me pull the current title record from the county. I'll call my contact there." He dialed, spoke in low tones for a few minutes, and hung up. When he turned back to them, his face was grave. "Victoria, the sale went through yesterday morning. All paperwork is recorded. The current owner of record is Zara Sterling." Victoria's mouth dropped open. "But how? I never signed anything. I never agreed to sell." Hale shuffled a few papers on his desk. The listing was filed under a power of attorney. The seller's agent had full legal authority to list and close on the property. Who? Who had that authority? Claire Bennett. Silence. Ethan's brain went completely blank. Claire. His wife. The quiet girl from Ohio who never complained. Who always smiled and nodded at his mom's rude comments. She'd done all of this. How? Victoria whispered. How could she possibly have power of attorney over my property? Hale sighed. According to the records, you signed a durable POA and a beneficial ownership agreement 6 months ago, when you purchased the unit. The documents state that Ms. Bennett provided 100% of the purchase funds, and you were holding title as a nominee only. Victoria went cold all over. She remembered now. That day at the title company, she'd been stressed. Her mom had just been released from the hospital. The construction project was bleeding money. Claire had met her there, had all the papers ready, told her they were just loan paperwork and disclosure forms. She'd signed every page without reading a single line. The wire transfer from Claire, she'd thought it was a loan. But the memo line, it hadn't said loan. It had said property funds. Oh my God. She'd walked right into it. Claire had set her up from the very beginning. That's not right. Margaret squawked. She tricked her. That agreement is invalid. Hale shook his head. Victoria's signature is on every page. The documents are notarized. In the eyes of the law, they're fully enforceable. Proving fraud in court would take years. And you'd need hard evidence that she intentionally misled you. Text messages. Recordings, something. Victoria deflated. She had nothing. She deleted all their old texts months ago. Wait, Ethan said, suddenly hopeful. Can we at least talk to her? Ask her to undo the sale? Maybe we can pay her back the money she put in. Plus interest. And Hale nodded. I can reach out to her counsel. It's worth trying. He picked up the phone and called my lawyer, David. He was on the line for less than 2 minutes. When he hung up, he looked even grimmer. Well, Margaret leaned forward. Ms. Bennett has no interest in negotiating the property sale. She says the transaction is final. He paused. She also asked me to tell you, Ethan, that dissolution of marriage papers will be served by the end of the week. You should expect them. Silence. Then Margaret made a strange, choked sound. Divorce? She's divorcing him. Victoria looked like she'd been slapped. Ethan sat there, numb. Divorce. She was leaving him. And she'd planned all of it before the wedding even happened. He thought about the way she'd smiled at him across the altar. The way she'd thanked Victoria at the reception. The quiet, calm look on her face when she'd asked him, Asterisk, you sure this is your sister's house? Asterisk, she'd been taunting him. The whole time. And he'd been too stupid to see it. Chapter 6. Divorce and accusations. Ethan went home that night in a daze. The mansion was quiet, but the air felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Margaret sat on the couch, white as a sheet, muttering to herself. Victoria paced and seethed. Divorce. Victoria spat. She thinks she can just walk away? After stealing a house from us. Margaret's eyes glinted. Mean and hard. Oh, she wants to play dirty? We can play dirty. She thinks she's getting a dime out of this divorce? Not a chance. We're going to make sure she leaves with nothing. Less than nothing. Victoria nodded. Exactly. We countersue. We say she defrauded the family. We say she married Ethan just to get access to our assets. We ruin her reputation so bad she'll never get a job in this city again. Ethan stared at them. For a second. He thought about defending me. About saying I wasn't like that. But then he thought about the house. The humiliation. The divorce papers. All the lies. Anger bubbled up in his chest. Hot and sharp. She'd tricked him. She'd made a fool out of him. Fine. If she wanted a war, she'd get one. 2 days later, a process server handed Ethan the official divorce petition. He tore open the envelope. Hands shaking. He'd expected me to ask for a clean split. To walk away with the house money and be done. He was wrong. The petition listed a full inventory of marital assets. It asked for 70% of everything they owned, plus a substantial claim for emotional distress damages. And attached to the back was a stack of what my lawyer called evidence of marital misconduct. Ethan flipped through it. Photos of him at a work happy hour, standing next to Lila Carter, a new project coordinator at his office. Screenshots of casual work texts they'd exchanged about deadlines and site meetings. My lawyer had framed it all as proof of an affair. Are you kidding me? Ethan yelled. This is ridiculous. Lila's just a coworker. Victoria leaned over his shoulder and scanned the pages. She's making it up. This is nothing. This won't hold up in court. Margaret nodded. Furious. That little liar. She's trying to paint you as a cheater so she can take more money. She jabbed a finger at Ethan. You call Hale right now. We file a counterclaim for defamation. We say she's fabricating evidence to extort us. We'll ruin her. Ethan grabbed his phone and called Hale. He ranted about the fake affair accusations. About how outrageous it all was. Hale listened. Then sighed. Ethan, I'm not gonna lie to you. None of this is proof of an affair. Not by a long shot. But that's not the point. What's the point? Then, the point is to establish a pattern. To show the judge that you behaved inappropriately. That you caused the breakdown of the marriage. Even if the affair doesn't stick. The judge will look at all of it, work happy hours, late night texts, and it'll color how they see the property split. He paused. And right now, she has the upper hand. She's got the property deal locked up. She's got the narrative that your family publicly humiliated her on your wedding day. And now she's got this misconduct claim. If this goes to trial, you're going to lose. Badly. Ethan's blood ran cold. Lose how badly? At minimum? You pay her the emotional damages. You lose a big chunk of your savings. And given that her lawyer is very good, there's a real chance the judge awards her attorney fees on top of it. Ethan sank back onto the couch. It was like every move he made just played right into my hands. He thought about the wedding, about how he'd said she's right and looked away. That one sentence, that one cowardly moment. And now his whole life was falling apart. Chapter 7. The office ambush the next morning. Margaret and Victoria cornered Ethan in the kitchen. Enough of this lawyer stuff, Margaret said. Sharp. Lawyers cost money and they take forever. We handle this our way. Ethan looked up. Tired. What do you mean? Mean you go down to her office. Victoria said. You march right into Venture Global Partners and you tell everyone there what she did. How she stole from our family. How she's a fraud. How she's lying about you cheating. You ruin her reputation. You make her so embarrassed she can't show her face there. Margaret nodded. She cares about her job, right? That's her whole identity. You take that away from her, and she'll fold. She'll drop the lawsuit. Give the house back. Whatever we want. Ethan hesitated. It sounded wrong. Petty. But then he thought about the divorce papers. The fake affair accusations. The way I'd smiled while his whole family fell apart. Why should he play fair? Okay, he said. I'll go. Victoria and Margaret smiled. Satisfied. They thought this was their ace in the hole. They thought I'd crumble the second my career was on the line. They had no idea I'd been waiting for them to try exactly this. An hour later, Ethan pulled into the parking deck of the Venture Global Tower downtown. He practiced his speech in the car. He was the wronged husband. He'd been betrayed. Scammed. Everyone would be on his side. He walked into the gleaming lobby and marched up to the front desk. I need to see Claire Bennett, he said, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. I'm her husband. It's an emergency. The receptionist blinked. Do you have an appointment? Sir, I don't need an appointment. My wife stole our house and is divorcing me out of nowhere. He raised his voice even more, turning to the handful of people waiting in the lobby. You all should know what kind of person works here. A liar. A thief. People turned to stare. Murmurs spread. This was it. Ethan thought. This was how he won. Then the elevator dinged. I stepped out, wearing a tailored blazer and heels. Calm as could be. I walked straight toward him, like I'd known he was coming. Ethan, I said, my voice clear and steady. Are you done making a scene? The whole lobby went quiet. Ethan's face turned red. A scene? You steal my family's house. You lie about me cheating. And I'm making a scene? I looked at him, completely unfazed. 3 things. I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. First, the Buckhead property was purchased entirely with my money. I have bank records, wire confirmations, and a signed beneficial ownership agreement to prove it. It was never your family's house. It was mine. Second, I am filing for divorce because your sister publicly humiliated me at our wedding, in front of 200 guests, and you stood there and agreed with her. Every person at that reception can confirm it. That is not a marriage. That is a joke. Third, if you have a legal problem with any of this, you tell your lawyer to call my lawyer. You do not come to my place of work and yell at my coworkers. That is harassment. And I will file a police report if you do it again. I paused, letting it sink in. The murmurs shifted. Now they were about him. Asterisk, oh wow. His sister did that at the wedding. Asterisk, so the house was hers the whole time. Asterisk, what a loser. Coming here to yell at her at work. Asterisk, Ethan's face went bright red. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. 2 security guards walked over, flanking him. Sir, one of them said, you need to leave. You're disturbing the peace. Ethan looked at me. I just stared back, cold and even. He knew he'd lost. Again. You'll regret this, he mumbled. This isn't over. He turned and practically ran out of the building. I turned to the receptionist and the guards and smiled. Sorry about that. Thanks for your help. I walked back to the elevator. Inside, I leaned against the wall and let out a long breath. My hands were shaking a little, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't. This was only round 2. I pulled out my phone and texted Zara. Office ambush handled. Round 2, 1. She texted back a second later. Nice. What's next? I looked up at my reflection in the elevator doors. Next, we let them dig themselves deeper. Chapter 8. The Trap with Lila. Ethan stumbled back to the mansion. Humiliated. He told Margaret and Victoria what had happened, how I'd flipped the whole thing on him, how everyone in the lobby had stared, how security had escorted him out. Margaret turned purple with rage. That little witch. She made you look like the bad guy. Victoria paced, seething. Okay, fine. The office thing didn't work. But we still have the affair claim. We fight that. We get Lila Carter to give a statement. Under oath. Saying nothing happened. Then we turn it around and say Claire fabricated evidence. That's defamation. We countersue. Margaret nodded fast. Yes, that's it. Get that girl to testify. We'll make Claire pay for lying. Ethan hesitated. Lila was just a kid. A new grad. She didn't deserve to get dragged into this mess. But he was desperate. Okay, he said. I'll reach out to her. He had no idea he was walking straight into the next trap I'd set. Here's what Ethan didn't know. I'd already prepared for this. I'd done my homework on Lila Carter. 22. Just out of UGA. Quiet. Hardworking. First job out of college. No interest in drama. I also knew that my intern, Mia, had been Lila's college roommate. They were still close friends. That morning, before Ethan even got in his car, I'd called Mia. Hey, Mia. Quick favor. Sure. Claire. What's up? I'm going through a divorce right now. It's gotten kind of messy. My husband might reach out to your friend Lila. They work together at Hayes Construction. He might try to pressure her into making a statement. Or he might show up where she lives. I don't want her to get hurt or scared. I paused. Like I was worried. Can you let her know? Tell her if he contacts her or shows up. She shouldn't engage. She should record everything. And if she feels unsafe, she calls the police immediately. Mia was horrified. Oh my gosh. Of course. That's so creepy. I'll call her right now. Thanks, Mia. I really appreciate it. Just keep her safe. Okay. Absolutely. And just like that, Lila was primed. When Ethan texted her that afternoon, asterisk, hey Lila. Quick question. Need your help with something personal, asterisk. She didn't see a coworker asking for a favor. She saw a married man her age, whose wife had just warned her he might harass her. Reaching out of nowhere. She texted back, asterisk, sorry. I don't think I can help with personal stuff. Please keep it work-related. Asterisk, Ethan frowned. He texted again, asterisk, it's about the divorce. My wife is saying we had an affair. I need you to help me clear my name. Can we meet for coffee? Asterisk, Lila's stomach dropped. An affair? This was exactly what Mia had warned her about. She texted back, asterisk, that's not appropriate. Please don't contact me about this. Asterisk, Ethan panicked. If Lila wouldn't help him, he had nothing. He got in his car and drove to her apartment complex. He dropped her off once after a late work event, so he knew where she lived. He parked out front and texted her, asterisk, I'm outside your building. Can we just talk for 5 minutes? That's all I need. Asterisk, when she didn't reply. He texted again, asterisk, if you don't come down, I'll come up and knock. This is important. Asterisk, Lila stared at her phone, terrified. A man she barely worked with was outside her apartment, threatening to come up. She remembered what I'd said. Asterisk, record everything. If you feel unsafe, call the police. Asterisk, she took screenshots of every text. She dialed 911. Hands shaking. Hi. I'd like to report someone harassing me. He's parked outside my apartment building, and he's threatening to come up to my door. Ethan was sitting in his car, scrolling through his phone, waiting for Lila to come down. When 2 police officers tapped on his window, he rolled it down. Confused. Ethan Hayes, one of them said. Yeah? What's this about? We have a report of stalking and harassment from a resident here. You need to come down to the station with us to make a statement. Ethan's blood ran cold. Stalking? No, that's not. She's my coworker. I just needed to talk to her. Save it for the station. Sir. They cuffed him. Put him in the back of the squad car. and drove him downtown. He was issued a formal warning and released a few hours later. But the police report went on file. Permanent. Public record. And the second it was filed, my lawyer had a copy. I was sitting at my desk when David called. "Claire? We got it. The police report is in. This is huge." "Good," I said. "File it as supplemental evidence. Pattern of harassment. Attempting to intimidate a witness. Already on it. This will seal the fault determination. The judge is gonna eat this up. He's not just gonna give you the larger share of assets, he's gonna slam him on the emotional damages too." I hung up the phone. I looked out the window at the city below. Ethan had walked right into it. Every single time. They all did. And the worst part for them? They still thought this was just about the divorce. They had no idea I hadn't even pulled out the big guns yet. Chapter 9. The family splinters. Ethan got home from the police station at 1 in the morning. Exhausted and humiliated. Margaret and Victoria were waiting up for him in the living room. Well, Victoria jumped up. "Did she testify? Did we get the statement?" Ethan laughed. Bitter and hollow. "She called the cops." Victoria. "She called the cops and said I was stalking her. I got taken down to the station." Silence. Margaret's mouth dropped open. "That little tramp. How dare she?" Victoria went pale. "The police. There's a report?" Ethan nodded. Victoria sank onto the couch. "Oh no. Oh no, no, no. Claire's gonna get her hands on this. She's gonna use it. She's gonna say you're violent. You're a harasser. Already happened." Ethan said. Flat. "My lawyer just texted. Her team already filed the police report as evidence. Says it proves I'm the at-fault party." He ran a hand through his hair. "David says we're gonna lose. Bad. I'm gonna lose most of my savings. Maybe even my car." Margaret made a strangled sound. "This is all her fault." Victoria spat. "That manipulative little, stop it." Ethan's voice was low. "Dangerous." Victoria blinked. "What?" I said stop it. Ethan stood up. His hands shaking with rage. "This is your fault. Both of you." Margaret reeled back like he'd slapped her. "Ethan. You." He pointed at Victoria. "You had to get up at my wedding and make that stupid speech. You had to humiliate her in front of everyone. And for what? To feel powerful? To prove you're better than her?" He laughed. Angry. "Well, congratulations. You proved something all right. You proved you're reckless and stupid and you ruined my entire life." "Ethan. How dare you and you?" He turned on Margaret. "You never liked her. You always called her a nobody. A gold digger. You egged Victoria on. You told me to keep her in her place. Well, look where that got us." His voice cracked. "You two told me to go to her office. You told me to go find Lila. Every single stupid idea that blew up in my face came from you. And now I'm the one who's gonna lose everything." Victoria stood there, tears in her eyes. Her whole life. Her little brother had done whatever she said. He'd never talked back. Not once. "Ethan. We were just trying to help. He yelled. "You weren't helping. You were just mad someone didn't bow down to you. And now we're all paying for it." He turned and stormed out of the room. The front door slammed behind him. Victoria burst into tears. Margaret sat there, stunned, her hands shaking. Their family so tight, so united, so sure they were always right, was cracking right down the middle. And I didn't even have to lift a finger. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. I opened the audio file a contact of mine had sent over. It was a recording of the whole screaming match, picked up by the smart speaker in the Hayes' living room. I'd had it tapped a week earlier, just in case. I listened to Ethan yell, to Victoria cry, to Margaret sputter. Zara sat on the couch across from me, sipping wine. "Well," she said. "How bad is it?" I smiled, turning off the recording. "Bad. They're eating each other alive." Zara chuckled. "Divide and conquer. Classic." I leaned back. They didn't need much help. A family that builds itself on being better than everyone else? It only takes one good push from the outside, and the whole thing implodes from the inside. I picked up my laptop and opened a file labeled Hayes Enterprises, Confidential. Pages and pages of financial records. contract details, tax filings. I'd spent 6 months putting it all together. Every shady deal, every under-the-table payment, every cut corner on their construction sites. All the dirty little secrets the Hayes family thought no one would ever find. Now, I said, closing the laptop. Let's give them something else to panic about. Chapter 10. The first warning shot the next morning. Victoria and Margaret were sitting at the kitchen table, miserable and quiet. When the phone rang, it was Richard Hayes, Ethan and Victoria's dad, the head of Hayes Enterprises. He was usually out of town on business, but his voice came through loud and furious. Victoria, what on earth have you done? She flinched. Dad? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me. Half our board members got an anonymous email at 6 a.m. today. It's got details on the 2019 highway contract, the tax write-offs, the subcontractor kickbacks, all of it. Victoria's blood turned to ice. That contract was the foundation of the company, the one that had made them rich. And the things they'd done to get it, if the IRS ever found out, it would ruin them. Who sent it? Margaret whispered, horrified. Richard's voice was cold. Who do you think? That girl Ethan married. Claire Bennett. Victoria sat down hard. Claire. She knew. She'd known all along. This wasn't just about a house. This wasn't just about a divorce. She'd been going after the whole company. Dad, I don't want to hear it, he snapped. You and your mother provoked her. You humiliated her at the wedding. You went after her job. And now she's coming after us. He took a deep, angry breath. I'm flying back tonight. You, me, and your mother are going to sit down and figure out how to fix this. Because if she leaks the rest of this, the whole company goes under. And I will not lose everything I built because you two couldn't keep your mouths shut. He hung up. Victoria dropped her phone onto the table. Margaret stared at her, white as a ghost. Margaret, she's been planning this since the beginning. Victoria whispered. She married him just to take us down. Margaret didn't argue. For the first time since this all started, she felt real, cold fear. They'd thought I was a naive small-town girl they could push around. They'd had it backwards the whole time. That afternoon, my lawyer called me. Claire, the Hayes family's attorney reached out. They want to sit down and negotiate. All of it, the divorce, the property, everything. Richard Hayes himself will be there. I smiled. Perfect. Tell him tomorrow. 10 a.m. Your office. Chapter 11. The negotiation. The conference room at David's firm was quiet and cold. Richard, Margaret, and Victoria were already there when I walked in. Richard was at the head of the table, red-faced and furious. Margaret looked small, scared. Victoria wouldn't meet my eyes. I sat down across from them, calm and polished. David set a stack of folders down in front of each of them. Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, Ms. Hayes, David said, professional as always. These are the terms Ms. Bennett is proposing. Richard grabbed the top folder and flipped it open. The first page was the divorce settlement. Ethan Hayes, as the at-fault party, to relinquish 100% of all marital assets. No alimony, no support, clean break. Richard's jaw tightened. He'd expected that. He flipped to the next section. His face went pale. Confidentiality non-disclosure agreement. Hayes Enterprises. The terms were simple. I would permanently withhold all evidence of tax irregularities, contract fraud, and workplace safety violations related to Hayes Enterprises. I would not share it with authorities, competitors, or the press. In exchange, Hayes Enterprises would transfer, free and clear, 30% of all outstanding common stock to Claire Bennett. 30%. Richard slammed the folder shut. This is blackmail, he snarled, staring daggers at me. I didn't flinch. David spoke before I could. Mr. Hayes, with all respect, it's not blackmail. Ms. Bennett is under no legal obligation to keep this information private. She could hand it over to the IRS and the Georgia Department of Labor tomorrow if she chose. What she's offering you is a path forward, a way to protect your company, your reputation, and your freedom. He paused. 30% of the company in exchange for not losing it all. In my professional opinion, that's a very reasonable offer. Richard's chest heaved. He knew David was right. If the information got out, the fines alone would bankrupt them. The criminal charges could put him in prison. We need time to discuss this, he said. Gruff. I looked at my watch. You have 10 minutes. I said. It was the first thing I'd said since walking in the room. Victoria's head snapped up. 10 minutes? Are you serious? This is our whole company, 10 minutes. I repeated. Calm. After that, I send the full file to every major news outlet in Atlanta. And the IRS. And OSHA. Your choice. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small digital recorder. I pressed play. The sound of Ethan screaming filled the room. Asterisk, you ruined my life. Both of you. Asterisk, Victoria's angry retort. Margaret's shrill demands to go to my office and ruin me. Every ugly, petty, cruel thing they'd said behind closed doors. I let it play for 30 seconds. Then clicked it off. 30% of the company. I said. Or all of this comes out. The fraud. The way you treat people. The way you thought you could humiliate anyone you wanted and face no consequences. I stood up. 10 minutes. I'll be outside. I walked out. David followed. Behind me, the room was dead silent. Chapter 12. The surrender 10 minutes later. David came out to get me. They're ready. I walked back into the conference room. Richard looked 10 years older. Margaret was crying quietly. Victoria stared at the table. Her face streaked with tears. The agreement was in front of Richard. A pen lay beside it. We agree, Richard said, his voice rough. He picked up the pen. He signed every page. One signature for the divorce. One signature for the stock transfer. One signature for the NDA. When he finished, he dropped the pen like it was on fire. Happy now, he said. Bitter. I picked up the documents and flipped through them, checking each signature. Pleased. I said. This is a business transaction. Mr. Hayes. Nothing personal. I stood up to leave. Claire. Victoria said. Quiet. I stopped. Was any of it real? She said. With Ethan? Did you ever even care about him? I looked at her. I cared. Once. I thought he was different. I thought your family might accept me. I paused. But you made sure that was impossible. Didn't you? You made it very clear what you thought of me. So I made a different choice. I chose to look out for myself. I turned and walked out. In the hallway, David handed me the copies. All official. The stock transfer will be processed by the end of the week. You're officially one of the largest shareholders of Hayes Enterprises. I nodded. Good work, David. I walked out of the building and onto the sidewalk. The sun was bright. Ethan was leaning against a lamppost, waiting for me. He looked terrible, unshaven. Eyes red. Clothes rumpled. He stood up straight when he saw me. Claire. I stopped. Is it true, he said. The whole thing. You married me just to get to my family's company. I looked at him. No, I said. I married you because I thought you loved me. I thought you'd have my back. But on our wedding day, you stood there and let your sister insult me. You agreed with her. You chose them over me. Every single time. I took a step closer. The company? That was just insurance. I started investigating because I didn't trust any of you. And I was right not to. He stared at me. Broken. Can you ever forgive me? I shook my head. No, I kept walking. Chapter 13. The aftermath, the divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Quick. Clean. No drama. Ethan didn't fight a single thing. He got almost nothing. I kept the proceeds from the condo sale. The savings. The car. He walked away with his clothes and his job. For a while. The 30% stake in Hayes Enterprises made me one of the most powerful shareholders. I got a seat on the board of directors. The first board meeting I attended. Richard sat at the head of the table and stared daggers at me the whole time. I didn't care. I asked questions. I pushed for audits. I called out the wasteful, outdated practices that had been going on for decades. The other shareholders loved it. The company's numbers started going up. Ethan still worked there. Of course. He was a project manager. Every quarterly meeting, He had to stand up in front of the board and present his numbers. And every time, he'd look up and see me sitting there, calm and sharp, taking notes. He never lasted long before he'd look away, face red. Victoria didn't fare much better. She lost the Buckhead condo. Of course. And when the company started tightening budgets, her bloated executive salary got cut in half. She had to sell her sports car, her designer wardrobe, her second home in the mountains. She moved into a tiny apartment in Decatur and posted bitter rants on social media about how unfair life was. Margaret had a breakdown after the stock transfer. She spent most days in bed, complaining about her health and how everyone had betrayed her. She'd run into old friends at the country club, and they'd whisper behind her back. She'd lost all the status she'd spent her whole life chasing. Richard? He was still CEO. But everyone knew he didn't call all the shots anymore. He had to run every major decision by the board. And I was always there, watching. They'd spent decades thinking they were untouchable, that they could treat anyone any way they wanted. And there would never be a price. Now they were paying for it. Every single day. Chapter 14, A New Life one cold November afternoon. I walked out of the Hayes Enterprises building after a board meeting. Victoria was waiting for me by the front doors. She looked thin, tired. Nothing like the polished, arrogant woman from the wedding. Claire, she said, can we talk? I stopped. What about? When does it end? She said. Quiet. When do you stop punishing us? I looked at her. I'm not punishing you, Victoria. I'm just here. I own 30% of this company. I have every right to be on that board. I paused. You thought I'd just disappear, didn't you? That after you took my dignity, I'd pack up and go back to Ohio and you'd never have to see me again. She didn't say anything. You and your family spent years looking down on people like me. You thought money and a last name made you better. It doesn't. It just made you careless. I adjusted my coat. You want this to feel easier? Stop waiting for me to forgive you. Start getting used to the fact that your actions had consequences. That's all. I walked past her. Outside, Zara was waiting in her car, engine running. She rolled down the window. All done. All done, I said, getting in. All the old business is settled. She grinned and pulled out into traffic. Where to next? I looked out the window at the skyline. The first snow of the year was starting to fall, soft and white. Where to next? I had a great job at Venture Global. I had a seat on the board of a major construction firm. I had money, security, freedom. I had my whole life ahead of me. Forward, I said. Zara laughed and stepped on the gas. The Hayes building shrank in the rearview mirror. All the insults, all the betrayal, all the quiet anger and hurt from that wedding day, they all got smaller and smaller, until they disappeared entirely. That wedding had been supposed to be the start of my life as a wife, as a member of the Hayes family. Instead, it had been the end of that version of me, and the beginning of something so much better. I leaned back in the seat and smiled. The road ahead was long, and for the first time in a long time, I was driving.